Welcome to Uncredible. My name's Jeremy, and I'm Uncredible. Let's get into our focus this week on uncredible.me. That's where the Substack is. 2 articles a week. Just check that out. Our Wednesday new article was called How Far is Too Far? And that article kind of plays off of last week's podcast episode 3. And I kind of dove into, in written form, what it feels like to run into these situations where you're kind of in panic and you're pushing yourself, and where playing this game where you're trying to figure out where your limits are. So that article just kind of, I talked a little bit about it in last week's podcast episode. If you're more of a reader, that's where you're going to pick up kind of the same information. I even referenced last week's episode in that article. But one thing that I wanted to note is over the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking a lot about pushing myself and pushing my limits and pushing through the pain. These have been some of the themes that I've been thinking about. And when I wrote that article, it was sort of on the tail end of thinking through, there is a limit. There's a point at which pushing your limits and stretching yourself and all those things, they're all good and they're necessary in order for you to grow and develop and become better at anything, whether it's running, lifting, health, in terms of intelligence, reading and all those things. But there's also a limit to where you're actually hurting yourself in any sphere of life. And so I wanted to add a little caveat to the last couple of weeks of just encouraging people to push their limits. There does come a point where you reach your limit, and it could be a physical limitation where you get injured. It could be like an emotional or psychological or mental limit where your body just can't mentally handle it anymore. And I've been talking on the podcast recently a lot about physical exertion and running and those kinds of things, but there is a reality mentally, when I go back to my college days and when I used to do a lot of writing, that you can exhaust yourself mentally and it will have a physical effect on your body, because when you can't get yourself to a place where you can really be focused on what you're doing, you kind of get numb to everything around you. And then you just can't do anything at a high level. I'm going to share a little bit about that when I get to my run on Thursday here in a bit. But yeah, the new article this week on uncredible.me was How Far is Too Far? And then an article that I really appreciate whenever I reread it is this article that I posted on Thursday. It's a throwback article from last year. It's probably about 10 months old now. And it was called Life's Winding Roads. And I wrote that article a little under a year ago when I finally decided to come back to doing all of this stuff. I left the podcast world, writing world, all of that public stuff. I left all of that like 10 years ago. We'll say 8 to 10 years ago. And coming back to it last year, stripping away some of the expected content from what I used to do and turning my attention to a different subject matter, but leveraging all these same forms of media. So like podcasting, writing, and I've slowly over the last year eased into it. It took me quite some time to decide, I'm going to try to do all of this, what I'm doing right now. And I've been trying to put limitations on myself because there's a reality with writing and with podcasting and recording where there's a mental burnout aspect to it. But I really like this article, Life's Winding Roads, because I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to. So if you're interested in reading the articles, pretty much all the content is on my Substack, which is linked through uncredible.me. The podcast gets put on there. And then there's also a thing called Uncredible Readings. That's on Spotify. Basically what that is, before I started podcasting, I was testing out all the technology. And I went ahead and started just reading my articles. And one of the reasons I'm doing Throwback Thursday is because when I was first starting getting into writing, I was writing pretty good articles, like great things were going out there. But the website that I was using, medium.com, was kind of it was kind of like a collection of writers that were all together, and you had to pay to read, and you had to pay to get your stuff read, and it was sort of this weird like ecosystem where if you were in the Medium community, you could read it, but outside of the Medium community, people really weren't going in. There was just too many paywalls and things like that. So I moved everything to Substack, and I want to get those articles back out. But also, when I first started writing, I hadn't gotten this idea about recording it. And what actually got me onto this track again was the idea of audiobooks. I listened to, on one of my longer runs last summer, I listened to David Goggins' audiobook. I can't remember. I've actually listened to 2 of his books. I'm trying to remember the title now of the one that I think it was called Can't Hurt Me, was the one that I listened to first. And I thought, I might not be able to do a podcast yet, but I'm already writing these articles. Why isn't there a forum for reading articles? The audiobook industry is pretty big. Seems like there's like a missing caveat there of audio articles. So that's what I kind of got started on that, and a whole bunch of articles got left by the wayside. So one of the ways in which I'm trying to get that library of articles built up is every Thursday I'm reposting some of those articles and then adding the audio back into it. On that note, on Spotify, if you're listening to the podcast, there's also a whole nother, I don't know if podcast is the right term, but I have a whole nother feed called Uncredible Readings, where it's literally 5 to 10 minute articles just read word for word, kind of like in an audiobook style. So if you're interested in that, if you like shorter form audio or something that'll just get you thinking real quick on a 10-minute drive to work, that's a great way to go if you're interested in that. So looking back at this past week, I'm in, today would be the last day of week 5 marathon training. Now, my schedule's a little bit off this week because normally I record on Fridays, which was yesterday, but my son stayed home. They were going on a winter retreat, and I've been kind of hounding him to do an interview with me. And I thought, if he stays home from school, instead of recording the podcast, he and I can get together and record the interview. So I'm recording this on Saturday after my rest day on Friday, and we did get the interview in, so that'll be our main topic today. But week 5 marathon training is basically at a close. I have a long run today. I'm hoping to hit 12 miles again. It'll probably be 7 to 8 outside and then 4 or 5 in here on the treadmill. So that's my plan. But it is officially the end of week 5. I should probably say, because I don't know when people are jumping into the podcast, it's a 5-week marathon, it's a 20-week marathon training block, and I'm in week 5, and it occurred to me today that I'm a quarter of the way there. So that's kind of cool. I'm training for the Buffalo Marathon, and that's going to be May 24th, 2026. I wrote that in my notes. I'm not sure if that's accurate. I think it's a Sunday. That's all I know. It's the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, and when I get closer, I'll be more worried about the date. So jumping back a week to Saturday, I ran 7 miles outside and 5 miles on the treadmill. And like I just mentioned, today I'm probably going to do something very similar to that. I really liked that process. So I've been running through the winter intentionally, trying to log as many outdoor miles as I can. And I got to tell you, it's definitely wearing on me. And it's not even the cold that's getting to me. It's just the fact that I can't get good footing. And a lot of the things that are in a training block are time or heart rate related or pace related. And you're trying to, like, for example, if my training block said 5 miles at a 9-minute per mile pace. Well, if it snows, there's literally no way I can do that outdoors. And mentally for me, doing it indoors is sort of like a cop-out. And so I've been doing all kinds of things to try to figure out how to make the treadmill match what the outdoor would be. I've got these, next week maybe I'll show you guys, like a mile per hour conversion where you adjust your incline for to increase the amount of resistance that you're getting to match where you would be outside. So it's been a challenge. Just the terrain is what I would say, and most of it is like the first mile of my run. I live in a community where it's nice that they've kept the brick roads, but man, the way they slope at the edges and in certain spots they're kind of like not perfectly lined up. It's a lot of wear and tear on your car too, but it's only small sections that are like this. But when you go out on a run and immediately your run starts out with you slipping and sliding and not even in a way where it's like icy, like that's a different kind of concern. It's just this sandy, slushy stuff. So when I did my treadmill run last week, I basically ran outside, I did my normal route outdoors, came home, changed out of my clothes. I actually switched my shoes out too, to the shoes that I'm going to be wearing, these Brooks. I'm bad with shoes. It's a pair of Brooks that I got for Christmas. I want to say 13s. It's probably not. Oh no, Brooks Ghost 7, maybe? I don't know. But I want to get those broken into. So I ran 5 miles on the treadmill. And I'll tell you, the first mile or two, I was like, what am I doing? This is killing me. But then as I got into the routine of running on the treadmill, I started really pushing myself on the treadmill. And knowing that I had already done some 7 hard miles outside, it really felt good to try to push myself even more in those last 5 miles. So I'll probably do something similar to that today. Stack those miles, work on pace, and really work on late race pace, because as you're training for a marathon, one of the things that I struggled with in my first marathon was actually having anything left in my leg muscles at the end of the race. You know, I was pretty much cooked in my first marathon by mile 16, and I was able to dig deep and find a little bit of pace, but I lost so much speed at the end of that race. It was my first race, it's to be expected, and so what I'm trying to do now is train my legs to be able to go a much further distance faster. So that was Saturday last week. Sunday was a rest day, but I've decided to move my upper body lift to Sundays, because trying to do a lift and a run on the same day, I just don't have the mental capacity for that. And I don't know how to explain it, but like if I lift first, I have zero motivation to go on a run. And then when I'm out on the run, I'm just sort of like, ugh. And if I try to put the cardio in first, I definitely don't have the strength and energy to do the lift after. So I think probably a coach would say to do the lifting first and the cardio after for the most benefit for weight loss and fat burn and all that. But either direction, either direction just doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me. So I started to slip the upper body weightlifting into my Sunday rest day. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my other rest day is Friday, which was yesterday. I'm going to start putting my mobility and stretching on Friday. It'll still be a rest day. I won't do any running on those 2 days, but I'll get the benefit of lifting and working out. So that was my Sunday rest day. Monday we did 6.2 miles at a 9-minute 48 pace. Really felt controlled and comfortable. That was a good day. Tuesday we did 5 miles, and that was structured on the treadmill. Most of those the main portion of that run was 7 miles per hour on the treadmill. I figured out that 6.6 miles per hour on the treadmill is where I want to be for the marathon, for the whole marathon. So what I'm doing on the treadmill is I'm setting it to 7, and every mile to mile and a half, slowing it down to about 5.6 or 6, just to drink, catch my breath, let my muscles relax, and then I'm bumping it back up to 7. Just trying to build this consistency of running at 7 so that when I get to the marathon, I'm not completely worn out. And like if I run at a 6.6 and I get tired late in the race, I'm not going to hit my pace. So I'm trying to push a little further beyond that 6.6 on the treadmill, which is, I forget, I have a conversion chart that I'm literally looking at right now, and I just don't want to get up and get it. So Wednesday, I did some leg lifts. If you've never used Monkey Feet, highly recommend it if you're not like a gym goer. I don't like to go to the gym myself. Monkey Feet are great. They're expensive. I think they're like 100, I don't know what they are now, honestly. I bought mine a couple of years ago. But basically, you can attach the dumbbell to your leg and do various lifts. And I find that I can do all the lifts that I need to do. And the weights don't correlate. So what I mean by that is a 10-pound Monkey Feet lift doesn't sound like a whole lot because you're doing legs, but man, it's different. It's different than trying to use your core and the rest of your body to help your leg. It really isolates the muscles that you're working on and only uses those muscles. So highly recommend that. Just check it out. I actually got that recommended to me through Joe Rogan's podcast, and I really enjoy using them. For some reason, I have a mental roadblock on those, where the day that I have to do them, it just feels like an extra step, where like with dumbbells, you just lift them and use them. The monkey feet, you do have to strap the dumbbell in and then strap that to your foot. So it's not that big of a deal. It's just one of those excuses that goes through your head like, oh, I'm going to have to get the monkey feet out and strap them on. And it's just like, once you get over that hump, it's fine. But in the meantime, it's hard to get over that hump. So Thursday it was actually supposed to be a 7-mile training run, and everything about it went wrong. I posted about this a little bit on Instagram, so that's why I'm chuckling. So whenever I do a run that's anywhere from 7 to 15 miles in a training block, anything that I would consider long, which is over a quarter marathon, I try to go to the bathroom and make sure that everything's good to go before I go out, if it's going to last an hour to 2 hours long. So went to the bathroom, thought we were good to go, and I'm like a mile and a half into this run, which I was actually looking forward to. I hadn't done a good outdoor long run in a couple of days, and I was like, yeah, this is good. And also, this week's been good in the sense that I've been able to hit my plan. Like, I have a plan. I mean, here's my plan, right? I've been able to hit most of my lifting and running goals this week. And I'm out there running around, and I get to where I have to make this decision. Do I really have to go to the bathroom, or can I make it? Because at this point, it's like a mile and a half in. I can make this turn where it basically, at that point, it's not a point of no return, but it's kind of like you've committed to the rest of the 5 miles. Because you're going to go past halfway, and turning around almost makes as much sense as finishing the run. So I'm really like at that precipice. And it's actually this portion of the run is like a slow uphill grade. And I was like, it's possible that I'm just feeling mentally strained from going up this hill. So I get through that, and I make the decision. I'm going to finish the run. I'll be fine. So I make the right-hand turn. If I had gone left, I would have gone home. So I make the right-hand turn, and things level out, and I start to relax, and I'm like, oh, this was not a situation where sometimes your body will try to convince you that you need to stop, and it'll do anything it can to get you to stop. And, making you feel like you have to go to the bathroom is one of those things. Well, I turn the corner, and all the exertion is gone from going up the hill, and I'm like, oh no, this is one of those points of no return. So I made it maybe a 1/10 of a mile down that road, and I was like, if I keep going, I'm going to be too far away from home to make it back. So I turn around, I ran back, and come home, go to the bathroom, pause the watch, and at that point, I've run 2.5 miles with a goal of 7. I think my goal was 7 at a 10-minute pace. The pacing's out the window already. The terrain was terrible. So I unpause it, and I'm like, you know what? I have this mental thing where I can shorten this run today and throw it out the window and say, you know what? It's a wash. Didn't go the way we wanted it to, so let's cancel and we'll come back on Saturday. But I also have in the back of my mind, I'm trying to build my weekly mileage. And so in order to hit 30 miles this week, which is my goal, I kind of needed at least 7 on Thursday. And now that I'm back at my house to start all over again, there's no nice way to get just 7. If I do a shorter, like a 5K route, I'll end up with 5. If I decide to go just restart that route that I was on, I'm going to end up in the 9 range. And I said, you know what? The whole point, particularly of the marathon training block, is to get me stronger at longer distances. So I decided I'm just going to not worry about pace so much at this point and just log miles. And I'm glad I did. I ended up going 9 miles. Strava said it was 8.88. I think my watch said 8.95. But I'm glad I did, because at the end of it, I was very stiff, but not sore. I wasn't in a lot of pain. And I think that's good. I think if I hadn't done those miles, I wouldn't know where I was at and how I was progressing. Over the last 3 weeks, as I've increased my mileage, I have noticed that my pain for the most part is subsiding. And that's good because I've actually been increasing my distance. And we're only, like I said, we're 5 weeks into a 20-week training block. Today, I have a little bit of soreness in my right calf, but nothing, I'll stretch it out and we'll go for the run. We'll be fine. Nothing crazy. So I'm feeling like this training block is giving me enough time for my body to get used to these longer distances. And we'll find out today because I'm going to go run, like I said, 10 to 12, somewhere in that range. But I do feel like the choices that I'm making, like instead of making that shorter run, making it a longer run, doing half my long runs inside and half outside, I do think that those choices are benefiting me this training block. So as we get later into the training block and my mileage gets longer, we'll see if that continues to be the case. But right now, I'm pretty happy with it. So tomorrow it's a rest day. I'm going to do my upper body lift and we'll be completing week 5 of the marathon training. So that's where we're at this week. Now, last week, I did something that I was somewhat hesitant to do. I talked about news and politics. Now, one of the reasons I was hesitant to do that is because that used to be 10 years ago, religion and politics were at the center of everything I talked about. And since then, since I got off of podcasting and off of article writing, that type of content has just been, the internet has just been completely saturated with people talking about politics, government, and there's just always a new news cycle coming out, and you're getting a different perspective all the time. You're getting the left's view, you're getting the right's view, you're getting the middle view, and they're just talking heads, and it's just this big market. And it's not something that I feel like I can add a ton of value to. I'm not an expert in any of that stuff, but last week I thought I'll take this one opportunity to share about it. And if you haven't listened to that podcast, it was my perspective on the ICE raids and the shootings that have occurred in Minneapolis. I was trying to avoid that because I don't want to be that person who just jumps into politics and just starts pulling clips from different news articles and fighting over that. That's not the point. But what I did realize after I did that episode and a new news story came up this week that I'm going to talk about briefly, that there is a place for the thoughts of a normal person hearing these news stories. I'm not going to give my take on whether things are right or wrong, but I do think, we'll see. I'll keep sliding it in here right before the main topic, but I do think there's going to be a place for talking about what's going on in the news, or what I would call, I'm just workshopping this, but my uncredible thoughts on what's going on in the world. Whether it's an official segment or something I do, it just seems like, I have my notes here on the computer, and it just seems like something that's going to keep coming up. This past week, the news story that came out was the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Now, like I said, I'm not looking to provide any insight. I haven't looked at the files. I honestly don't even know what people mean when they say they've been reading the documents. I did go to the website, which I think is the website where you can like type in a word search, but I'm not entirely sure how that works and whether or not you can trust the search capability of this site that they've posted. And I've also noticed, because I'm on X, I've noticed that there have been some images and videos that have come out that are like, just from my perspective, strangely redacted, where certain people, there's like a black box over the person. It's sort of like taking the idea of redaction in a piece of paper and applying it to photos and videos. It's very bizarre things that are coming out. But rather than give my thoughts on any of that, any people, any individuals, there were two things that stood out to me that just the average guy who's working a normal job might want to think about. And the first one is, it seems like if you're listening to any of the news, there's some pretty shady stuff going on behind the door, behind the door deals, backdoor deals, whatever you call it, whether it's blackmail or I'm not sure what you call all this stuff that's going on, but our government appears, not our government, not just our government, but the government seems like it's involved with some pretty wild stuff, and stuff that I guess isn't that surprising when you start thinking about what government is and what big business is. I think for the average person who goes to work every day, goes grocery shopping, I think a lot of this is just myth and lore. But these files seem to, the reports coming out of them seem to validate what you might think is going on in the world. That it's not as simple as we vote for a politician and the politician does what we voted for him to do. It seems like there are mega players who are doing some crazy things that are shady, that are just downright shady. It seems like a gray area as to whether or not it's illegal and what makes something illegal on the world stage. Like a law in America might not be a law in Saudi Arabia. Like, who knows? But one of the things that I was thinking about was the timeline on Jeffrey Epstein. So all these files are coming out, and the number that they're throwing around is 3.5 million documents have been released. I'll talk about that number in a minute, but these are being released 20 years after he was active, 10 years, I think, after he killed himself or was killed, depending on which conspiracy theory you want to go with. So the man's been dead somewhat, 10 years? I don't even know the timeline. I'm not even pretending to know the timeline. But he's dead. And he hasn't been active for probably 20 years doing what he was doing. The thought that I came to was this. If that's what they did, and I'm saying they because, they've taken this guy's name, Jeffrey Epstein, and put it over top of it, and then they've released it. But there's all these players involved, people involved, that they're all doing things behind the scenes that are just not what the average person would consider to be ethical or moral, right? They're doing things that are at a base level just not right. They're just not right. Now, can people justify these things? Probably. I'm sure they can, just like we talked about last week. Like you will justify whatever immorality as long as it supports your good cause. Your method will match your madness. So I'm sure they have some way of justifying all the actions that they're doing, despite how satanic, disgusting, awful they seem. But if that's what they were doing, and there's 3.5 million documents, and I've heard there's an estimated another additional 3 million that are tied to cases and stuff that are still not released, bringing the number to like 6 to 7 million documents. If that's what they did, what are they doing? Right? So if it's not as though because he is gone, that this Jeffrey Epstein is gone and Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, that this stopped. It's still going on, but we're so focused on getting justice for what has happened that we're not really looking at what is happening. And it's one of the reasons I got out of the talking about politics in the first place, is it seems like the government or the powers that be are constantly recycling things that are basically the same. Conspiracy theories, shady activities. They're just constantly doing these war crimes behind our backs, and then to make themselves look better and to cover up that they're doing it now, they tell us about the ones that they did before. Like, you go back as far as like the 70s, and well, what happened? What was going on with JFK? And then you recycle another one, and then I was listening to Rogan the other day, and this I think it was Mike Benz, maybe, I don't know. He was talking about how Epstein goes all the way back to the CIA's involvement back then, and he claims that there's documents for that. But like every 20 to 30 to 50 years, we're releasing these documents of all the crimes or immoral things, maybe they're not crimes legally, that government and rich people and wealthy people are involved with. And it's like, but we never ever actually get to this place where we establish they do this. Historically, they do this. What we have zero evidence of is them stopping or getting caught or facing any kind of justice. And so there's this constant, we do shady things, we lie about it, Like, we lie on TV about it. You can find the broadcasts of us lying about it. We know what's going on. We're lying about it. We face no penalty, no punishment. And then someone else comes along for political purposes who is probably involved in doing the same thing here, releasing the documents about them having done it then, as if it's not currently going on now, and lying to us now about the fact that it's still going on. And it had me thinking that if you're caught up in the Epstein files and this whole release, it's all very interesting, right? It's obvious that they're not releasing anything that would implicate anyone that you would hope it would implicate, right? Because I think the average person wants to see somebody who lied, cheated, stole, did any kind of illegal activity. We want to see them brought to justice because we want to see them held to the same standard that we would be held to if we were found to have done anything similar. Anything of the like, we would be in jail, we would be facing crimes, we would be prosecuted. We want to know that justice exists at the highest levels as much as it does at the lowest levels. And I think the reality is that we know it doesn't. And we're constantly clamoring for it. And I think that's why politicians are kind of offering it they're always willing to tell you that it did happen and confirm your suspicions. But so far, as I'm concerned, I've never seen a situation where in mass you've seen them go, yeah, and by the way, we do that now. We do the same thing now. We just don't talk about it. You'll find out about it 20 to 30 years from now, when it's the most important election of your lifetime, right? Like, they'll just continue to regurgitate most important election of your lifetime. We have to bring justice to the victims. We have to get this right. But in the end, nothing ever gets fixed. Nothing ever becomes right. They just continue to do what they were doing. And so, like, for me, the uncredible take that I have is, if that's what they did, what are they doing? And I'm more concerned, I think if you take the time to delve into the conspiracy that is these 3 million or 3.5 million documents, files, videos, all this stuff, and you uncover something that's just blown out of the water, what good's it going to do? What's it going to change for today? Now, I guess you could argue that the victims will get justice. That's fair. That's fair. But if they're still doing it now, like, what does that do for the people right now who are being abused, trafficked, cheated? Like, what are we going to just continue to abuse people and lie, cheat, and steal only to get justice for them 20 years later and just keep recycling that process? Like it just seems like this cycle of 30 to 40 year cycle is awfully convenient for the people perpetrating the crimes, because there's never any justice now. And that kind of works out because as long as it doesn't happen now, they're able to get away with doing what they're doing now. And they reap all the benefits of what they're doing now, and they face no consequences of it for, 40 years. I mean, that's a half of a life. And if you're an adult when you're doing it, 40-year time frame, you're at retirement age. You got all the benefit you could have hoped, and maximum damage, since that's a phrase we're throwing out, to the victims for the majority of their life. So what do we really solve? I'm not saying it's not worth looking into. It's just what's more interesting to me is not so much what they did, which we clearly know that shady things were happening, but what are they doing now? Like, this should focus our attention and say, okay, if all this exists, what's going on now? And then the second thing that stands out to me was, and this might be the most uncredible thing that I could think of, but mainly because it's so low level and they're so comfortable doing this that it's at a point to where it bothers me. But like I mentioned last week, whenever you hear the same phrase thrown around, different media outlets by leaders, they've constructed that intentionally for a reason. It might be so that they can't be held liable for something. It might be so they can look good. It might just be they want to saturate the news cycle with that term or that phrase. Whatever the reason is, it's propaganda. And the thing that's been standing out to me that nobody has really questioned, at least nobody I've interacted with, I listen to podcasts, I scroll through X, and I see all the conspiracy theories and stuff. is the number of documents that were released. It's like, have you ever thought about what 3 million really is? We have trillions of dollars of debt. We know Trump is a billionaire, and we throw numbers like billions and trillions around like they're ones and twos. And so what I did, and I'll try to show these images on the video stream, is I had ChatGPT create for me a slide by slide, 4 slides, just sort of showing what 3.5 million documents actually looks like. And the reason I did this was back in the day when in politics the big thing was the debt being super high, trillions of dollars. There was this really great animated video that just kept zooming out infinitely, showing how much cash, I think it was 1 trillion, it might have been 10 trillion, I don't know what the debt was back then, but it just zoomed out, and at the end of it you had all these pallets sitting sitting in a football field or next to an airplane, and the visual was just kind of like, wow, that's a lot of debt. And I keep hearing this number, 3.5 million documents, and I'm going, that's a lot of documents. Like, the fact that they've gone through, I don't know if they used AI to go through them or if they had just hundreds of employees going through it, but I had ChatGPT also do the math on how long it would take for an individual to read these documents, and I think it was something like 12 or 14 years if you just read 24/7, 7 days a week nonstop, and it was like 51 years if you just like punched in every day to read these documents. And I'm sitting there going like, 51 years. And what occurred to me was, what are the chances that these files are even legitimate? Or that number's even legitimate? I mean, I should have done this too. Like, how long does it even take to figure out that there are 3.5 million documents? I used to, when I published my book was like 240 pages. This was back in 2015, 2014. Oh, I guess I was writing it in 2013. I remember trying to print the 240 pages, and I don't know if you've ever done a large document in Microsoft Word, but I crashed. It might have been this computer that I'm using right now, because I haven't updated my computer in like a decade or more. But I clicked print, and when you click print in Microsoft, it brings up a preview of, like a print preview. And some people are listening to me going, well, duh. But what was crazy was when you have a single document that the computer tries to create a print preview of, it was crashing. Of course, that's older technology. We've got better technology, but with better technology comes with better quality, higher quality stuff, and the need for more resources, et cetera, et cetera. The idea, like if I were to drop a 3.5 million page document into a modern computer, and I'm talking about the modern computer you get at Walmart, not the modern supercomputer that these guys build for their gaming. That's a different thing. Like, what? Would it even be able to do that? And then, like, printing the document. Like, when I did that 240-page document, it was like print and then go about your day and come back and hope it worked. And by the way, the printer, it's off camera, but that printer that I definitely printed it on is right next to me right now. Like, all my technology is old because I've taken care of it and I keep up with it. But the sheer volume of this idea of 3.5 million documents is just completely insane. It's completely insane. And so for me, when I look at the news of the release of these Epstein files, I'm just sort of like blown away by how, there's a lot of like intricacies you can get into of which person shows up and should that person be in these files and what does it mean to actually be in the files. I saw, I think Colbert and Jon Stewart joking about the fact that their name comes up, in the files as somebody referencing them as an example, right? They're not actually actively involved with it, but they're in there. And it's like, where did we get the number 3.5 million? Because the logistics on that, I don't know, maybe they put it in a document feeder and it counted it and it's a rough estimate. But man, when you start throwing around numbers like that, I'll show the images, but if you're an individual conspiracy theorist type person and you're you've committed to really getting into this. It's going to take you half your life to really read and get the context of what's going on. And I don't know how organized it is. I don't know how logical it is. I don't know how much stuff, like, it could be files of over the years of all of his court cases. I don't know what's in there, but it could just be repeated stuff of testimonies just repeated over and over at different court cases, and they just dumped it on us. It kind of feels like something that they're using to say, I feel like in the not too distant future, we will hear the line, we've released more documents than any administration in the history of the U.S. And they're going to use that 3.5 million document as the proof. And people in general are going to be like, oh yeah, they did. But the majority of these documents may be completely worthless, useless, duplicates, whatever. It's just, on the one hand, it's impressive that they released them. On the other hand, it raises questions as to what's useful information and whether or not that information is even worth. It's going to keep people, conspiracy theorists, going for the next 30 to 40 years while they continue to do what they're doing in those files that we don't know about because they're in the other files. And then another huge amount of files will be released in 20, 30, 40 years. And those same types of people will get into that, and they will just continue to have this like 20, 30, 40-year buffer between them and anyone ever finding out what they're doing. All right, so this is the easiest part of recording this podcast this week. Yesterday, as I mentioned at the beginning, I got to interview my son, which a lot of this was, and you'll see it's a 15-minute interview. A lot of this interview was just a test of the technology that I'm using. I would like to do more Uncredible interviews as main topics, but I'm genuinely not sure if this technology can handle it. And to my surprise, it actually worked very well. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to transition to my interview with my son. And what we're going to talk about is so a couple weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, my son and I drove up to Rochester, New York for a Winter Warrior half marathon. I talked about it in episode 00. I may have brought it up in episode 1. But what I haven't done is gotten his perspective, because it's a unique perspective, because it's not as simple. Running these races is not as simple as just showing up and running. There's some planning and details involved. And for him specifically, he's been my driver for a lot of my major races that I've done. He took me to both my Erie PA races, and he took me to the Rochester race, and he will probably take me to all the states that we're going to go to this year as well. One thing I want to clarify in the interview, I've been throwing around this number, 600 miles, because in total, my son and I drove 600 miles in order to run the race in Rochester. But for clarification purposes, it was really only 150 miles away from us, but we had to drive that 150 miles 4 times, because the day before the half marathon, we had to go all the way up, pick up the bib, and come back. So that was 300 miles, 150 down, 150 back. And then the next day, we hopped in the car, drove another 150 miles back up to Rochester, ran the race, and then drove another 150 back. So in the interview, I do mention that we drove like 600 miles. He drove most of it. But I want to make it clear that I didn't drive 600 miles in total one trip. I don't think that that's something that is probably ever going to happen. I do think my longest trip that I have planned this year is like 6 to 7 hours, depending on traffic and things like that. I don't really know the trips that well, but I've laid out all of them, and I think my furthest is about 6.5 hours. So, but yeah, just as you're listening to this interview, I thought his perspective was fantastic, and just know that when I say 600 miles, I don't mean we had a single 600-mile trip. So here is my first Uncredible interview with my son, Alexander. All right, we are doing our first Uncredible interview. I am with Alexander, my son. That's scary. Look at your face.
Your face.
All right. So we're just doing a test, so it doesn't matter. But let's just start by talking about, how's your new job doing?
It's doing great. It's pretty. I'm a cashier at Tops, if that matters, but it's pretty nice. I just stand around and check people out. It's pretty nice.
Don't they have self-checkouts? Like, I don't understand.
They do. There's like 8 of them, but a lot of people still like to use the normal checkouts.
Okay. So would you say more people use self-checkout or more people use the actual, like the one you're running?
It's kind of, I think it's like 50-50. A lot of people, like, it's kind of in between. A lot of people use the self-checkout, but also I think people with more items use the normal ones. I don't know what you call it.
So they don't have to do that much work?
Yeah.
They don't want to put in the work?
For real.
All right, so let's talk about the trip to the Winter Warrior Half Marathon. Now, I didn't tell you this, but remember I told you that guy on Instagram that showed me the picture that I connected with him? I don't know if I told you the story or not.
I think you did.
Yeah, he's got, his name was, I think his name's Chad. I hope I'm getting that right. Him and a buddy of his have a podcast. And Daryl's the guy that I first heard him on a podcast. And then we connected on Instagram. I featured their podcast, Daryl's podcast, on my first episode that was like a test episode. And so the two of them got together. They've been doing interviews on Daryl's podcast. Well, this past week they got together and did their first podcast on, they both have cerebral palsy. And they mentioned me from my first episode in their first episode of their joint one. So that was kind of cool. So anyway, we drove up to the Winter Warrior Half Marathon. I think I totaled it to be around 600 miles. I wanted to hear your perspective of the trip, and maybe we can break it down. Like, let's start with the first day going up. Like, what was it like?
The first day, like when we had to check in?
Yeah, when we went to get the bibs and stuff.
That was pretty, it was mostly just driving. Like, we didn't do too much else. That was the day that was really bad with the snow and the highways, and we almost spun out on the on-ramp. That was kind of fun. Me.
You came in so hot on that on-ramp, like you were just coming in.
Yeah.
I didn't think you had it. I was scared, dude. I seriously thought, oh yeah, for sure. I was like sitting there going, please don't. I was in my head as we were sliding off the highway, or well, off the ramp. I was thinking it's okay if we don't make it today, we can still go and get the bib the next day. Yeah. So in my head, I was like, don't freak out. It'll be your first real accident. So and I'm here, so let's chill. So literally, the introduction to that drive was you almost going off the ramp.
I know. It was like the first 10 minutes too. So
now you drove the whole way up, right? I think.
Yeah.
So talk about how bad that was, because it was brutal.
It was rough. As we got closer to Rochester, it got a lot better. But the whole way, like halfway, the whole one lane was completely filled with snow, and people did go in it, but I wouldn't have gone in it, and because the other lane too still had snow on it, and it was still rough and slippery, and it was brutal.
I don't think we passed, at least for the first hour and a half. I don't think we even attempted a pass, right?
No, we didn't.
And then was it on the way up that it cleared up or did it? It didn't clear up at all that day, did it?
No, as we got closer to Rochester, it cleared up, and then as we got back to our home, it got worse.
Well, and then on the first day that we went up too, that was when Google took us like the goofy way.
Yeah, the weird back roads. And that was also brutal because the roads were just as bad, and except with turns.
Yeah, and it made the trip like twice as long. I wouldn't say twice as long, but I mean, they weren't plowed. We did run into that one plow that was coming that one road it took us on. We saw 3. Yeah, that's right. We saw 3 plows back, and it was only like a 10-minute stretch, and there were 3 plows on that thing.
Yeah,
so.
that was pretty crazy actually.
So that was the first day. So the next day we get up early in the morning. And we took a whole different route, and that's when we saw the clear distinction between the like the weather just stopped like an hour and a half in, right?
Yeah, like it was after like an hour and a half. We were just cruising. It was great.
Yeah, that was a good trip. We got there. We actually got there early. We planned to have bad roads, and then we get there like an hour early, right? We had to sit.
Yeah.
We went to the bathroom twice because I had to clear that situation up.
Yeah.
Because I did not want to have a problem in, this, in the winter. So so you dropped me off. Actually, we sat there for like half an hour watching people go get their bibs and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I bailed on. Actually, I spilled my water.
Oh, did you? I don't even.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you did because they were like that was weird.
Yeah, because we hung my water vest in the back, and the whole trip it was like shaking back and forth.
Yeah.
And it loosened the caps to my water. Actually, you know what? I didn't even plan this. I have these stupid things here. So this cap actually like loosened up, and when I went to make sure everything was good, it like came off, and so it's like, what was it, like 20 degrees out, and I got water all over me to start the race. And I put my shoes on, I get out, I tell you to go. So I go run a half marathon. What did you do?
Oh shoot, let me remember. I immediately went to Taco Bell and got some sort of burrito. And then I went to first I went to Best Buy to buy the cooler for my computer.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And then I went to Taco Bell.
You're going to have to clarify cooler because some people might think you went and got like a cooler to put drinks in.
No, I can have the box right here. It's a...
Oh, he came prepared. Oh, we can see your stash, by the way.
Really?
Your Mountain Dew stash.
This is the specific one, Cooler Master something. It's a good one if you know. It's a PC cooler for cooling down the CPU.
Hopefully if there's anybody who ever watches this that's a tech person, they'll be like, woohoo!
Got for like $25.
Nice.
It's a good deal.
So after you got that, you went to Taco Bell?
Yeah. Got some burritos.
Okay.
And then I was just going to sit in the parking lot and eat the parking lot at the race. And they had all the entrances blocked off. And Google kept trying to bring me to the same one. So I had like 30 minutes of just trying to get back in.
Gotcha.
But that's usually what I do. I just go out and get some food and just wait around. It's pretty nice.
So then did you eat, because you couldn't get in, did you eat somewhere else or did you just wait to get in to eat?
I did eventually get in after like 20, 30 minutes, and I did eat in the car.
So how long after that did you have to wait for me to come around for that video? I didn't even see you when I came around, but how long did you sit?
Like after I finished eating, I only waited like 20, 30 minutes.
No, that's not bad. How did you know when to get out to catch me coming around the corner? Were you following me on the RaceJoy app?
I was following you on the app, and I was also, because I parked right next to like where they had it blocked off, so I was watching you from the car.
Okay. But did you get out when you saw me to video?
Yeah, like as you turned the corner, I got out and got my camera ready. I
didn't think the RaceJoy app was accurate enough to give you a heads up. And I know you weren't wearing any very warm clothes, so I didn't think you stood outside very long. So then I run by you, completely ignore you. Yeah. I was looking for you, but then I was like, I'm not gonna see him. And then that guy bolted by me. I don't know. He might have been in the relay. There were actually three different races happening in that event. There was a quarter marathon, which Chad was running. I was running the half marathon, and then there was a half marathon relay. And the half marathon relay people were like mega aggressive because they only had to do one lap. And the rest, I had to do four. I had to do 4 laps, and then I think Chad probably had to do 2 laps. So like I'm at the end of my rope, and this guy's like he's got 4 feet to go, and he's got a barrel in front of me. So I had to actually cut your video short when I used it on Instagram because he cut right in front of me. He totally camera blocked me.
Yeah.
So yeah. So let's talk about. I think what I'm going to do when I actually cut this video is I might bring your other video in. So after it's over, we hop in the car and we get lost like 4 times trying to find a Subway for some reason.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, we ended up in the middle of, I guess it was Rochester, but like where there was clearly like a town. Like, I mean, like we were in like the courthouse area of the town. Yeah. And we go to the most random Subway ever. It's like in a plaza of like, it's like a lawyer finance place, like nice brick building, and there's just a Subway in the middle.
Yeah, it was weird.
And we're at the Subway and we see no less than 2 people on scooters?
Yeah, like 2 or 3, like
it was a lot
riding around.
It was like being in a place where there's a trend that we missed, like in that area only, and everyone was riding. I mean, it's 22 degrees with snow, and those guys are riding around on those scooters. So then we kind of got out of. Google kept mapping us the wrong way to get to the highway, so we end up going on this, like, what was it, 4 or 8 lanes? How many lanes were in that one big highway?
Like 4-ish. 4, yeah, it was like 4, I think. It was
like
big.
four on each side? I think it was 4 on each side.
It might have been. It was big.
It was, yeah, well, we'll play the video of this random guy, so we're just trying to get out of there, trying to get to the highway, and this random dude just goes for, I think we were at a red light, right? And then he goes.
No, we were, I'm not sure what was happening. Maybe we were at a red light, but it was slow for some reason.
Yeah, he took his chance, and he's on one of these scooters, and he just bolts across, and we're both just like, what is happening?
Just going across the whole.
Yeah. So that was our highlight for the trip. That was funny. I'll throw the video in here at some point, and then it'll fade back and forth. So that'll be cool. But that was probably the most random thing.
Yeah.
So I did last week in my podcast episode and in a couple of my articles that I have online, I talked about some of the runs last year in the summer when I failed to complete the run. And you said it doesn't happen as often as maybe I feel like it does. I know I called Mommy for a couple assists, but at least on 2 occasions I called you. And like, what's your thinking when I call? Like, are you just like, he's fine?
No, I do kind of think you're fine. Like, I don't know how far you are out. Sometimes when you're on like 62.
Yeah.
There was one time when you were on 62 and you were pretty far out.
Yeah, but I think the first. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Usually I'm like, this dude's got to be fine. He's just weak and stuff.
Oh, jeez.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, no. Yeah, that absolutely that first. I think that first time. So I had like 3 or 4 shots at that route, which I actually wrote about that when the bird was flying over me. It was so hot last summer, and I was just trying to hit 20 miles, and I would make it through the first stretch of it, and then I would start to run back 62 from Grandpa and Grandma's house towards our house, and it's like my body was like, yeah, you're done now, bud. So I know one time my legs started to cramp up and I just couldn't do it. I think the first time I ran out of water. I think I wrote about it. I panicked a little bit because I ate one of those Nugo protein bars, which are fantastic. Don't want to ruin any sponsorship opportunities here, but it was like caught in my throat because it was so thick and like heavy. It was like a bad choice for a run. And so I drank all my water trying to wash that down, and then I get to the back half of return section of 62. And then I think one time I had you pick me up at the bowling alley, and I regretted that so much because I was only like a mile and a half away from home, and I would have had my goal. But I had been walking for like 4 miles, and I'm like, this is dumb. Nobody's winning anything here. So yeah. Anything cool going on? That's pretty much going to wrap up the interview. That's all I wanted to talk about, but we'll see how the test goes.
Yeah. No, I don't have anything too much. I'm going to get this computer because literally just as recording this, just got it fixed up with the cooler. Not that one, a different one. But, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to get some of my old hard drives rolling. And
that too.
Hopefully we can wipe them out. You'll then create we're going to try to do like a local server.
Yeah, it's a NAS.
Nice. I don't know if I don't know what that means. Hopefully somebody else does. What's NAS mean? I don't even know.
It's a network attached storage.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that sense.
Yeah.
Got it. Nice. All right. Well, thanks for helping me with this. We'll see how the recordings go. So yeah, that was my first interview, the first Uncredible interview. He gets to be a big part of that, and I thought he did a great job. At first, he seemed a little bit nervous to talk on camera, but he got into it really well. And you see his interest in computers. He loves to tinker with computers and pull old things apart, put them together, make them faster. And he's the one, if you notice in that interview, his camera feed is just like 100 times clearer than mine, because I'm sitting here using the built-in webcam that's on my laptop, and he figured out how to connect, which is not that hard. I say figured out, but he got the idea in his head to connect his phone to his computer and use his phone as the camera, as the webcam for his stream. It came out really great. My side of it came out pretty crappy, but knowing that he can do that and that I can do that in the future, if I do interviews down the road, I'm going to just do what he did. I'm going to connect that to the laptop and use the same camera that I'm using now for the interview. So it was nice to get his perspective, and we had a lot of fun. It's going to be a good year. He's turned 18, and he's going to be on his own here soon. Proud of him for getting a job, and really has been a big help for me on those long runs when I couldn't finish. And I've wrote about it, and I've talked about it on the podcast. There've been times where I couldn't finish a race, and I had to call for help. And most of the times that I've gotten help, it's from him. So definitely appreciate that, because it's tough when you're finished and it's hot and you're out of water and your legs are cramping and you're 8 miles away from home. That's an uncomfortable place to be. It's a very uncomfortable place to be. So I appreciate him being able to come and help me in those situations. Now, let's get into our podcast feature. First, I want to kind of I guess this is like a new feature, but an old feature. In episode 0, I highlighted Daryl Perry's podcast, and I mentioned it in the interview that I had with my son. And so when I mentioned his podcast before, Daryl had Chad on for an interview on his podcast for an interview. And so I highlighted that because Chad and I both ran the Winter Warrior Half Marathon. Well, I ran the half, he ran the quarter. Well, as I mentioned in the interview, this past week, I think it was this past week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I don't know. Chad Williams launched his podcast called the Cerebral Palsey Perspective, and he and Daryl are doing a joint podcast together where that's going to be more focused on what Chad does, and they're going to be doing interviews and stuff like that. But it was fun to know that in this episode 1 for them, they were highlighting and referencing our interaction, and in my episode 0, where I was just testing things out, I was mentioning them. So it was neat to get that mention, and I'll share a quick clip because I think it's fun, and I appreciate these two guys, and they really have a fantastic perspective on fitness, and with the fact that they both have cerebral palsy and they have that added struggle, it creates a really neat conversation to where when I'm listening to Chad specifically, but both of them share their thoughts, it's like they're overcoming something that's different from what you're overcoming, but they are doing it. And even though it's different, it's a different life challenge, it's inspiring to see them still do a podcast, still do fitness, still do health. Daryl does a lot with mental health. To see them working through those situations, knowing the challenges that they face, and then you look at your own life and you go, I have my own challenges. And so it's just kind of inspiring to see what they're doing there. So check out, I don't even know. I think Daryl has like 2 podcasts, a ton of information on his blog and his website. He is just, from what I could tell, I haven't had a chance to go through all his stuff, just an absolute machine I don't know if he's been doing this for years or if he just likes doing it, but he's got a ton of content, and I'm excited to see what Chad is going to put together with this new podcast as well. But let me just stop for a minute and share the clip that from their most recent episode, and check them out. Here's that clip.
You introduced me to Jeremy a couple weeks ago, or by us having a conversation, he commented, and then he put his podcast out. He's back into podcasting again, and It's been cool to talk to him a little bit. He had posted something the other day that was a it's like a meme about professional wrestling. So that was another conversation to have on when you get guys around our age, like that seems to be at some point in our life, at least, we were able to, like, gravitate around that. So yeah, that's been fun. But again, like, I think the biggest thing with any type of media is you have the opportunity to connect people. And again, you never know what's going to happen or what it's going to do.
Jeremy actually he traveled from out of the area to run a Winter Warrior. It's the Winter Warrior quarter marathon, it was called. It was like 6.5 miles. That was a race that I ran a couple weeks ago. I was working through some things, some issues with my foot and my back, and I was going to cancel. And then I decided, like, you know what, with the mantra, I'm just going to show up for myself, and I'm going to do what I can do. And it might not look like some of my other races, but I'm going to show up and enjoy the atmosphere and enjoy the moment and see what happens. And it was a slower race for me. I just kind of ran along at a pace that was comfortable, and I enjoyed the environment, and it was an incredible race. But Jeremy drove in from out of state to run that race, and I had shared a little video clip as I was running. I had the phone out, and there was 1,000 runners, which was pretty cool to see in January.
Yeah.
So I had the phone out, and along the way, I'm taking little videos, and I shared it on, like, the Fleet Feet page. They shared it, and he's like, I remember seeing you out there, and you kicked butt. And he sent me a request, and so we've linked up on social media. But that's the same thing. The running community has been amazing. I've made so many connections through the running community, and at one point, the thought of putting myself out there and running a race where there's going to be hundreds of people that are going to look at me and see me running in a way that looks different than them. I was terrified to do that.
So again, I appreciate their perspective, and I got to second what they both said about the running community. It's really a neat place to get involved, and there are some people, I find this to be very rare in the running community, who are critical of training blocks or strategies, but for the most part, it's a lot of average people just trying to better themselves and overcome difficult life circumstances, whatever those might be. And the community is super welcoming. It's definitely, if you get into running and you've not thought about doing a race, I highly encourage it. I didn't want to do a race when I did my first one, and when I did it, it was awesome. It was awesome. So I'm featuring them as sort of a second feature because I've referenced them before. Another podcast that I want to feature this week, and I'll be quick with it, but it's a great episode. And if you're thinking about doing an ultra marathon, which is over a marathon, this is a good episode. And I haven't had a chance to listen to anything but this one episode, but it hooked me for two reasons. It was let me see what the podcast is actually called. It's called the Community Trail Running with host Andrew Lee. And the episode I listened to was Running 100 Miles with Coach Andrew Miller. And what's interesting about this podcast is a lot of the stuff that I listen to is long form, so 2-3 hours long. And I flipped this on, and in my head, I assumed that's what it was going to be. It was going to be a couple hours or an hour. And when it was over, it was only like 20 minutes long, and I was getting a ton of good information, helpful information, really relating to the conversation. It was over. It was like they started talking like they were going to close things out, and I was like, "What? How long have I been listening to this?" It was like 20 minutes long, but man, it was very beneficial. This episode, Running 100 Miles with Coach Andrew Miller. I am actually somebody who's thinking about doing an ultra. I have not mentally committed to it at all because, listen, I know my limitations in terms of the marathon, and I want to see how the Buffalo Marathon goes. I have scheduled 3, maybe 4. There's a 4th marathon I'm looking at for this year. I want to see if I can get my body to a place where at the end of a marathon, I don't feel like I can't walk. So, and I will say this, at the end of my half marathon, the one that I did in January, I felt like I could walk away from that and do whatever. Like I could go eat at Burger King. But I'll tell you this, after my marathon, I was like, get me home. And I need to sit for the next 7-8 hours. I need to go to bed. Like, if I feel like if I can't get past that point in the marathon distance, I'm going to be hard pressed to go for the 100K and then the 100 miles. But if you're thinking about it, a lot of great tips in this episode of the community running trail or community trail running. It was really just base level, like you're having a conversation with your coach, and Andrew Miller is a coach. Very beneficial, 20 minutes of your time, great episode. Even if you're at the half marathon distance, thinking about going to the marathon distance, there's just some really wise advice. The kind of advice that it's measured. Okay, so it's not like you got to get out there and run thousands of miles. It was very much like take care of your body, don't hurt yourself, pay attention to your muscles, build slowly and gradually. These are all lessons that I completely ignored last year when I was trying to run races. I mean, I went from never running a race to running a marathon in the span of right around 6 months. And that's, turns out, not the best strategy. So did I do it? Yes. But is that the best way to get the most production out of your body, first of all, physically, and then your best times for pace and things like that? Absolutely not. So, yay, congratulations to me. I forced myself to do these things. But now I'm entering into a world where I'm trying to finesse it and work with my body and control the mental side of things and do things in a measured approach. And that episode of community trail running was literally hit right where it made me think that if I'm going to do an ultra, it might be a year out still, and I need to plan well in advance for that ultra. And it also got me thinking, because I've been already, before I've even done my second marathon, I've been planning. I planned out this whole year all the way to November, and now I've already been looking at races for December, January, February of next year. Like, where am I going to land with that, and how am I going to pay for it? And it's got me to step back and go, if I'm going to do an ultra, that might be something I want to leave a gap for and train specifically for. And these races that I'm doing this year are great. They're great for building mileage. But as I'm looking at an ultra, it's one of those things where it's like, you got to take this seriously. And if you're going to take it seriously, it's going to take some time to train for it. So yeah, check out both of those, the Cerebral Palsey Perspective with Chad and Daryl, and then Community Trail Running with host Andrew Lee. Both of those are on Spotify. Check them out. Great podcasts. Let's wrap things up with the quote of the week. And I'm going to have to flip quite a ways to find this one because this was a couple days ago. The quote, which I actually do have typed out, the greatest pleasure in life is doing the things people say we cannot do. Let's see where that's at in here. Here it is. So I don't know why I feel like I have to hold this up to the camera, but the greatest pleasure in life is doing the things people say we cannot do. And when that popped up on my daily calendar this week, I thought to myself, that I can relate to. I'll have to fix that later. That I can relate to. The idea of somebody looking at me and saying, that will get you injured, that will get you hurt, I wouldn't recommend doing that. And then in my mind going, I think I can do it. That drives me. That motivates me. That's something I get excited about. That's why I'm doing these runs. That's why I run in the winter. That's why I run in the snow. There's a lot of it goes back to both my own mental voice saying, this is outside of your capacity. And also when I say I'm thinking about running 10 miles, I'm thinking about running a marathon, and I get that response, that's not something you can do at your age, or you've never trained for anything like that. That's something you need to train years for. I love seeing that doubt and then overcoming it. And it really is what this quote, the greatest pleasure in life is doing the things people say we cannot do. I don't know if that's the greatest pleasure in life. I can't confirm, but it feels pretty good when you doubt yourself and the world doubts you, and you go out and you prove to yourself and to others that what they said you couldn't do was possible, that's a pretty good feeling. Let's wrap this up. Couple things. Thanks for listening, obviously, to the podcast. Remember to like and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, that goes a long way. Just so you get notifications, but also for the algorithm to keep pushing it out to other people. If you're on Spotify, same thing. Click follow. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's easy to do. And it keeps you notified. We record once a week, so it's not going to bog your stream down or anything like that. I've mentioned this each week. I do have Uncredible merch. This is, I don't know how I haven't worn this particular shirt in a single episode yet, but this is by far my favorite Uncredible shirt that I have on Redbubble. But you can find it at merch.uncredible.me. Links are going to be in the notes, but the pricing is pretty high, granted, but I can confirm that the quality of the shirts is great. I've been wearing this shirt now. This was the first one that I got towards the end of last year. I wear these on my long runs. This is the athletic t-shirt. I will admit that I got their cheapest t-shirt. I've actually worn it for one of the episodes, but I didn't mention it. So if you're worried about quality, the point I'm getting to is if you're worried about quality or is it just going to be a printed t-shirt, I've been impressed that they don't wear off. I do have a t-shirt, the cotton t-shirt, that doesn't look the greatest, but I think that's on me for picking a color shirt that didn't match the design. It's not terrible, but it's just kind of gives you that iron-on feel. But other than that, I have 5 other shirts, and I have a ball cap, all of which I've been wearing out on these long runs, and they're holding up, and I've washed them repeatedly. I will say the sweatshirt, I have the Winter Beast sweatshirt. That seems like it's wearing out, the print on that's wearing off, but again, I wear these things on 10, 15-mile runs, and then I wash them, and I do this week in and week out. So for them to last 6 months to a year without losing anything like this one, I've probably worn this one the most, and it shows no sign of wear and tear. So I know when I first got it, I thought, oh boy, that's going to wear out quick, and it hasn't. So check that out. The merch is at merch.uncredible.me. And if you like to follow the runs or just keep up to date on what I'm doing, I do post quite frequently on Instagram, and it's at Jeremy Lundmark to check that out. Everything, pretty much everything, is on the Substack at uncredible.me. You will get a do you want to subscribe screen. You don't have to do that at the very bottom. There's a link. You just click no, and then you can get into the website. And it'll keep asking you to subscribe. If you subscribe, it's free to subscribe, and it'll shoot an email to you whenever I post. And that'll probably be about 3 to 4 times a week because I post 2 articles followed by the podcast on there. And then, it's a good community too, so jump into the Substack. And as always, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Stay uncredible.